So delegates at the Africa Investment Forum are discussing opportunities in each other's states, hoping to almost double investments achieved last year. The forum was opened yesterday by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who called on countries to use the trillions of dollars locked in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to boost their economies. African Development Bank President Akinwumi Adesina said they were so far targeting deals worth more than $67 billion this year. The conference is being attended by leaders and delegates from Africa, Asia, North and South America. Infrastructure forming a major theme at the conference so far, with the ADB looking to close the gap between, or rather when comparing Africa and other continents. And to talk about how and if the summit can advance economic transformation is Dr Gil Mhlati, Chairman and founder of Transformational Investment Portfolio One, or TIP One, which is listed on the JSE with the aim to see capital to advance economic transformation. A very good evening to you, Dr. Mhlati, and thank you very much for speaking to us.
Evening, thank you for having us.
So let's start with that question. Can this Africa Investment Forum bleed into economic transformation or facilitate it?
Definitely. I was at the conference, and there are consortia of development banks, both European, Asian and Islamic Development Bank, that are focusing on investing in Africa. There are even consortia of guarantee schemes from the MEGA, which is the development bank, which is the one based in New York, and many others that were there today to talk Afri-Exim, to talk about how they can come with co-guarantee schemes to do the investments.
And we'll talk about TIP One in just a moment, but some would say those are two competing priorities. When you talk about FDI, for instance, and you talk about economic transformation, that though they may merge somewhere, but they do diverge as well.
There are 4 pillars of economic transformation if you look at the financial sector charter, and those are infrastructural. One is management and control. The other one is transformational infrastructure, which is agriculture, housing, as well as municipal water and sanitation. So that type of transformation, building new cities, is actually economic transformation, because it is our people who benefit from that.
And I mean, some would argue that you would also have to lean more towards labor-intensive sectors or economic models. And I mean, just looking at some of the criticism against South Africa in the past, especially when it comes to investors, has been said to be the influence of labor, how they loom large over some of the sectors that they want to invest in. What is your point of view of that?
There must be a balance. I mean, obviously the unions would like to protect jobs, and obviously labor has its costs, and the management and business would like to decrease costs. However, you need to employ people to have economic stability in the country, and therefore you need to come up with labor-intensive policies, as well as labor-creating enterprises. And you know, in South Africa, for instance, we have done empowerment since, in fact, since democracy for the last 25 years. And there's 400 billion of that wealth that is locked in on the JSE. Just the correction, we're not listing on the JSE, we're listing on the ZAX, which is the new stock exchange, and which is the 4th industrial type of stock exchange, because it's a T-Naught stock exchange. It can verify whether you qualify to be BEE or not instantly, and if you don't, it can stop the trade. And
how do you hope to unlock those funds that you're projecting? I think you said something in the region of 400 billion rand. Is it to buy out certain investors and redistribute? How you? Well,
the people, we actually give the holders diversification, collateralization, and liquidity. If you understand, in BEE, you only have one share. Wait for 10 years. After 10 years, it's said not to be in the money, and you have to wait for another 10 years. This is not good for people who participate in BEE structures.
But how do you, for instance, transform or at least democratize the money markets in South Africa through your venture?
First of all, in this previously, these pension funds wouldn't get into BEEs, because they were the mandated investment would not count towards BEE. But now it's recognized that at least the first 40% will not be counted from mandated investors. Secondly, if the funds are managed by black people, the funds themselves are regarded as BEE. Thirdly, if you can now have 51% and 49% unqualified and 51% qualified investors, you let in other people who have got capital who can participate in the market.
And let's talk about the public-private partnership in doing that. Just looking at the trajectory that government has followed so far, and in fact, it's been said that we have one of the most redistributive budgets in the world, but it's failed to filter down and reduce the Gini coefficient. So,
you know what happens, Tsepiso? On the day of SASSA, I come from Mount Frere. Long queues, the banks are busy, the people take the money, and they go to ShopRite. By the end of the day, that money is in Stellenbosch. So it may be redistributed in terms of giving to people, but they go and buy instantly in established companies. The money doesn't circulate in the community. Therefore, we have to create SMEs in order for the money to circulate in the community. In Lodium, here in South Africa, in Pretoria, the money could circulate 11 times before it goes out.
But it's a discussion that we've been having, and it's somehow also being mired in political contestation of radical infrastructural change or our economic direction. So we have the big ideas looking at economies such as in Zimbabwe and Namibia. These are comparative for us, and it seems they would follow the same trajectory on paper, but in the implementation it's completely different.
We've done something different now.
Yes.
We have what is called the township and rural economy. We've given it to the deputy president, and he's driving it from a policy perspective. And even this stock exchange that we'll be listing on, it could be regarded as a township stock exchange. It gives access to ordinary people because it is easy to use. You can use an app, and it is relatively cheap. It costs R1.50 to do a transaction. Yet in the JSE, it costs a lot of money. And you can list as an SME on this exchange, and it can be incubated on this exchange. And therefore, we're talking to people like NASASA. They are considering working with us because these are schemes where they save. We're talking to pension funds, insurers. You know, for argument's sake, if you buy a funeral scheme, why should that money that it comes from Shembe Church, for instance, or even the church in the north, why should that money go and be invested in a company? I mean, for instance, why shouldn't it be invested in the Vodacom Yebo Yet, which is the same as Vodacom itself? But the asset managers don't think about transformation when they allocate capital. And anyway, those companies like Putumanati, it's got a good dividend, but 20%. It's much better than its even current company. But the asset managers, so we're targeting even the emerging asset managers to say, when you are going to allocate capital, you should look at which company you are allocating capital to, what BEE structure does it have, what's the BEE-ness of that particular company. The PIC could do the same. It's actually virtually
what should it be, as you say, the BEE-ness of that
There
company?
are rules. There is there are rules.
I know there are rules, but there's still somehow...
There are codes. There are everything.
And now, we know that those are also constantly flouted.
Well, yes. You know why? Because the managers are not BEE managers. That's the problem. For instance, if you take the PIC, for instance, if the PIC insisted that every procurement official in its invested companies should be black, every HR person should be black, you would get a transformation faster in terms of management of companies. And therefore, you'd get more of transformation because people will be constantly thinking about how to transform the economy. And
I'm going to look back to another venture that was introduced by government, the Black Industrialist, which obviously was hailed at its time as going beyond creating a bigger, greater black middle class, which we also know has failed to generally uplift the high levels of inequality.
What is required is SMEs. You need small, medium enterprises. And that has been recognized. In this conference, one part is a South African Investment Conference, that is before. One part went to Soweto. And in this conference, the global banks like FMO says We want women, we want SMEs. No big transaction as such. That's very distributive. It creates employment. That's what we should target. And this transformation that we're doing now is the first one. This is a listed facing one. The second one's an unlisted, and they are targeting SMEs. The auto sector, for instance. I mean, if you go to Soweto, everybody's fixing a car. Why don't we improve those people? You know?
So then just going forward, what should we be doing in modernizing the networking industries?
Look, there's what is called the public-private growth initiative, which is an initiative by the private sector to try and partner with government, come up with ways in which everybody understands that this is unsustainable. And therefore, everybody is trying to put a shoulder to the wheel. So we are ourselves trying to do that as well. But there are many other people who are doing the same thing. There are many funds coming through. The money is there. The money is definitely there. And there are a lot of ideas from young, mostly black Africans. And they are doing wonderful things. They just need to be supported.
And obviously the historical disadvantage categorization has also been important in trying to transform the economy, identifying vulnerable communities and vulnerable members of society. Should there be greater initiative?
You know, if I go to Zambia or Zimbabwe or any other African country, it's mostly Africans. So I don't have to think about transformation. There will come a time where, in terms of numbers, just the demographics. I mean, if you go to East London, for instance, just the demographics alone, they are for us. So why don't we just pull up our socks and work hard and make sure that we deliver an economy for ourselves? Okay. Yes, the capital mostly is locked in and is managed by white people. We have to find a way of unlocking that capital. But most of the people have, I mean, now, for instance, there's something called the ASISA. The money is starting to come back, 100 billion for the banks. So they're starting to do deals. And it's happening. Okay. We just have to put shoulder on the wheel and do things. Innovation is one of the things that will help us.
All right, thank you very much for your time inside. Dr. Gil Mhlati is chairman and founder of Transformational Investment Portfolio One, or TIP One. Alvin?